You go to bed tired. You wake up puffy. Your belly looks flatter in the morning than it did when you fell asleep. But by noon, the bloating is back. And by evening, your midsection feels swollen and heavy again. You have tried eating less at dinner. You have tried herbal teas. You have tried going to bed earlier. And none of it has made that stubborn layer around your middle move even slightly. The frustrating truth is that belly fat after 45 does not behave the way belly fat behaved at 30. It is not responding to the same rules because it is not being driven by the same forces. What is actually driving it has almost everything to do with what happens inside your body between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., a window of time when most women are doing exactly the wrong things without realizing it. The body does not shut down during sleep. It shifts into a completely different mode of operation during the deepest phases of sleep, which typically occur in the first half of the night. The body releases its highest concentrations of growth hormone. Growth hormone is not about growing taller. In an adult body, it is the primary signal for fat mobilization, tissue repair, and cellular recovery. It tells fat cells to open up and release their stored energy, particularly from visceral fat, the deep abdominal fat that wraps around the organs. This is the fat that gives the belly its hard, rounded shape, different from the softer subcutaneous fat just under the skin. Visceral fat is metabolically active and responds directly to hormonal signals, which means it can be released efficiently, but only under the right conditions. The problem is that growth hormone can only do its job when insulin is low. Insulin and growth hormone operate on opposite schedules. When insulin is elevated, growth hormone is suppressed. The body cannot simultaneously store energy and release it. So the most critical factor in overnight fat burning is not what you eat during the day, but how low your insulin is when you go to sleep. And this is where the nighttime habits of most women after 45 quietly sabotage everything. Eating dinner late, especially a meal with refined carbohydrates or sugar, keeps insulin elevated for hours. The body needs roughly 3 hours after a meal to bring insulin back to baseline, and longer if the meal was carbohydrate heavy. Going to sleep at 10 p.m. after eating at 8:30 p.m. means insulin is still elevated when the body attempts to enter deep sleep and release growth hormone. The growth hormone pulse is blunted or absent entirely. Instead of a night spent mobilizing belly fat and repairing tissue, the body spends the night in a metabolic holding pattern, neither storing nor releasing, simply maintaining. Night after night of this pattern means the belly never gets the hormonal signal to release its fat. And no amount of daytime dieting can compensate for a missed growth hormone window. But insulin timing is only half of the nighttime equation. The other half is cortisol. In a well-functioning body, cortisol follows a predictable 24-hour rhythm. It peaks in the early morning to help you wake up and drops steadily throughout the day, reaching its lowest point around midnight. This drop is what allows melatonin to rise, sleep to deepen, and growth hormone to surge. After 45, this rhythm frequently breaks down. Cortisol stays elevated into the evening, often because of chronic stress, poor sleep from previous nights, or hormonal fluctuations that destabilize the adrenal response. Progesterone, which normally helps counterbalance cortisol and promote calm in the evening, is often the first hormone to decline during this transition, sometimes years before estrogen drops noticeably. Without progesterone's calming influence, cortisol has less opposition in the evening, and the result is a nervous system stuck in alert mode when it should be winding down. When cortisol is still high at bedtime, melatonin cannot rise properly, sleep stays shallow, and growth hormone never reaches the levels needed to mobilize fat. If you are someone who feels wired at 10 p.m. but exhausted at 7 a.m., this inverted cortisol pattern is very likely part of the picture. This is also why the standard advice to sleep more misses the point. You can spend 8 hours in bed and still not get the hormonal benefit of sleep if the architecture of your sleep is wrong. Shallow sleep, fragmented sleep, and sleep without proper cortisol-melatonin cycling does not produce the growth hormone surge that drives overnight fat mobilization. The goal is not more sleep. The goal is deeper, hormonally optimized sleep. So here's the protocol. It starts with your last meal. Finish eating at least 3 hours before you plan to be in bed. If you sleep at 10:30, your last bite should be no later than 7:30. Make that last meal moderate in protein, rich in vegetables, and low in refined carbohydrates and sugar. A piece of grilled fish with roasted vegetables and olive oil is a strong choice. A bowl of pasta with bread is not. The protein provides amino acids the body will use for overnight repair, while keeping insulin low enough to allow the growth hormone window to open on schedule. If you feel hungry between dinner and bedtime, which can happen as the body adjusts to the earlier meal window, a very small portion of fat and protein, such as a tablespoon of almond butter or a few slices of turkey, can satisfy the hunger without spiking insulin. What you want to avoid is anything that triggers a significant blood sugar response. Fruit juice, crackers, cereal, or anything sweet. These foods will reset the insulin clock and close the growth hormone window before it had a chance to open. Once the meal window closes, the next priority is bringing cortisol down deliberately. The body does not drop cortisol on its own when it has been running on stress all day. It needs a signal. The most effective signal is activating the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch of the nervous system responsible for rest and recovery. A simple way to do this is slow, controlled breathing. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 6 to 8 counts. Do this for 5 minutes while lying or sitting comfortably. The extended exhale stimulates the vagus nerve, which directly lowers cortisol and heart rate. This is not meditation. It is a physiological trigger. The body does not need to believe anything or feel anything spiritual for this to work. It is a mechanical input that produces a hormonal output. Temperature plays a larger role than most people realize. The body needs to drop its core temperature by about 1 to 2 degrees to initiate deep sleep. A bedroom that is too warm keeps the body in a shallow sleep state, where growth hormone release is minimal. Set your room temperature to 65 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 to 19 degrees Celsius. If climate control is not available, a cool shower, 60 to 90 minutes before bed, achieves the same effect through a rebound mechanism. The body heats up briefly during the shower, then overcorrects by dropping core temperature below baseline, which triggers the sleep cascade. For women experiencing night sweats, this temperature management becomes even more critical. A cooler room reduces the frequency and intensity of hot flashes during sleep, which means fewer awakenings and more time spent in the deep sleep phases where growth hormone does its work. Moisture-wicking bed sheets and lightweight, breathable sleepwear can also make a meaningful difference in maintaining the temperature conditions that support uninterrupted hormonal cycling throughout the night. Supplementation can meaningfully support this entire process. Magnesium glycinate, taken at 200 to 400 milligrams about 30 minutes before bed, promotes muscle relaxation, supports GABA activity in the brain, and has been shown to improve sleep quality, specifically in women going through hormonal transitions. The glycinate form is important because it crosses the blood-brain barrier more effectively than other forms of magnesium and has a calming effect rather than a laxative one. If nighttime anxiety or racing thoughts are part of the pattern, adding 100 to 200 milligrams of L-theanine alongside the magnesium can further quiet the nervous system without causing grogginess the next morning. L-theanine increases alpha brainwave activity, which is the brain state associated with calm alertness and the transition into sleep. Light exposure after sunset is one of the most underestimated disruptors of the nighttime fat-burning cycle. Blue light from phones, tablets, and televisions suppresses melatonin production by up to 50%, even with brief exposure. Melatonin is not only a sleep hormone, it is also involved in regulating insulin sensitivity and fat metabolism during the night. Suppressing it means both worse sleep and worse metabolic function overnight. The simplest intervention is eliminating screens for 30 to 60 minutes before bed. If that is not realistic, blue light blocking glasses with amber or orange lenses worn after sunset can reduce the melatonin suppression significantly. Dimming household lights in the evening also sends a signal to the brain that the day is ending and the hormonal shift towards sleep should begin. One more element ties this entire protocol together. Sleeping on your left side has been shown to improve lymphatic drainage from the brain through the glymphatic system, a cleanup process that only activates during deep sleep. The glymphatic system clears metabolic waste from brain tissue, including the inflammatory compounds that contribute to brain fog and poor cognitive function. Better glymphatic drainage also supports the hypothalamus and pituitary gland, the master regulators of hormonal output, including growth hormone. It is a small positional change with a measurable downstream effect. The cumulative result of this nighttime protocol, when followed consistently, is a body that enters deep sleep faster, stays in deep sleep longer, produces a full-growth hormone surge, mobilizes visceral fat for energy overnight, and wakes up with lower cortisol, less puffiness, and a flatter abdomen. Most women notice the first changes within 7 to 10 days. Less bloating in the morning, fewer 3 a.m. wake-ups, and more energy in the first hours after rising. The belly fat itself takes longer to visibly change, usually 4 to 6 weeks, because visceral fat release is a gradual hormonal process, not a dramatic overnight event. But once the nighttime environment is corrected, the body finally has the conditions it needs to do what it has been trying to do all along. The belly fat that has been sitting there for months or years was never permanent. It was waiting for a hormonal signal that never arrived because the nighttime environment kept blocking it. Correct the environment, and the signal can finally get through. Your body was never working against you. It was waiting for the right conditions. Now you know how to create them.